The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the most deeply polarizing issues of our time. But what if we could talk about this conflict in a way that's helpful, biblical, and honest? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do in today's episode. I'm joined by my friend Justin Kron, the founding director of the Kesher Project and co-producer of the award-winning film Hope in the Holy Land. Justin has spent years working at the intersection of faith, conflict, and reconciliation, and now he's producing a new film about one of the darkest days in Israel's modern history, October 7th. So together, we're going to explore what happened, what it means, and how Jews and Christians can work together to promote hope in the Holy Land and beyond. All right. Hey, Justin, welcome to the Bridge Builders Forum. Man, it's been a while since we've been able to connect in person, but it's good to see you. I think the last time we saw each other, we ran into each other in Israel, but that was before October 7th.
Yes.
But
yes, we did. Yeah, you were leading a tour. I was leading a tour.
So it's great to see you again, man. I know you've been busy. You're working on another film, or not working on it. It's just about ready to be released. We're going to talk about all of that here in just a few minutes. But it's really great to see you. Thanks for coming on today.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Justin, I want to tell you a little bit about him before we get into this incredibly important and timely topic. But Justin is the founding director of an organization called the Kesher Project, which I encourage you to Google. I'll also put links to it in the show notes in the description. But the Kesher Project is dedicated to connecting the church to the Jewish roots of the faith and also to Jewish people and Jewish neighbors. So Justin is also the co-producer of the award-winning film, Hope in the Holy Land. Again, I'll put a link to that in the notes in the description, but you definitely want to check that out. And very excited, Justin has also co-produced a soon-to-be-released film bearing witness to the horrific events now just kind of simply known as October 7th. So we'll talk about that as well. So Justin has a lot of experience in education and bridge building, particularly in the context of the extremely difficult and challenging minefield of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So Justin, again, I'm really glad to have you on here today and just looking forward to a good discussion with you.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate being able to serve you and your listeners today.
Yeah, thanks. So, hey, before we jump into I would say the real complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I'd love for our listeners just to get to know you a little bit. Most importantly, I would say of anything is that you are a Cubs fan, and that's a great place to be right now. Is that your Cubbies?
Yes, it is. Go Cubs.
I know you're riding high. When we're recording this, they're really playing well. Best record in the league.
Yeah,
right?
top of the NL right now.
Oh man, it's great. One of no question, my favorite baseball stadium it's Wrigley Field. There's nothing like it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
No debate, no disagreement there whatsoever.
That's right. It is really a special.
The friendly confines. All are welcome.
Yes.
As long as you come and root for the Cubs.
Right. Well, it's a great place to be. No, I'm happy for you that the Cubs are doing well. But of course, in addition to your love for the Cubs, you have a really interesting background that has really positioned you to be, I would say, a lot of things, but specifically a bridge builder between Jews and Christians. So talk to us about just a little bit of your background and your story. I know you grew up in the Chicago area and Skokie, and just give us a little bit of your journey and how you ended up here with starting the Kesher Project.
Yeah, so I come from a mixed family background, Jewish on my mother's side, Catholic on my father's side. So I kind of grew up with a foot in both worlds. My mother became a follower of Jesus when I was just 5 years old.
Okay.
And then I followed suit when I was 7 and really kind of started, I guess you could say, a journey at that point of learning to reconcile my Jesusness with my Jewishness. And just realizing that I don't have to check my Jewish identity and heritage at the door.
Yeah.
just because I'm a follower of Jesus. A lot of my life has just really been about learning how to bridge those two worlds together.
Yeah.
Part of that was going to Israel when I was in my mid-20s, taking a tour there with my mother, just being hugely impacted by it. Anyone who might be listening right now, if you've been to Israel, you know what that experience is like. And it just opened up my eyes to so much more of what the Bible teaches, and just understanding more about Israel and the history of the Jewish people. And I just felt like, hey, other people need to learn more about this too. And so that eventually led me into doing tours.
Yeah.
And then learning about Israel's conflict with its Arab neighbors. And that really laid then the groundwork for me to then make a film with Todd Moorhead, who's the co-creator and producer of our first film, Hope in the Holy Land, which tries to tell the story of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty neat how your background really did position you, I know, for a lot of the work that you're doing right now. And I've known you, I think I've known you for at least 10 years. Our paths have crossed in many different venues through the years. And I know you've done a lot of great things in the area of, Jewish Christian dialogue and education, but you have done something that very few people can say they have done. So as we've already alluded to a couple times, in 2021, you created and co-produced an award-winning documentary called Hope in the Holy Land. And the subtitle is Delving Beneath the Surface of the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. So again, I've already said it once. I want to say it one more time. I strongly recommend folks to check out this film if you haven't seen it. It is a very well done, balanced look and analysis of the situation. It's available on Amazon, so you can check it out. But
speaking of which, it's the only 5-star rated film on Amazon Prime related to the conflict.
Wow. So, okay, that's saying something. Yeah. So folks, check it out for sure. But man, Justin, producing a film is a huge and bold undertaking. So tell us why you kind of what inspired you to create this film, and what message were you seeking to communicate through Hope in the Holy Land?
Yeah, so Todd Moorhead and we had observed that there were some other films that were out targeted primarily to the Christian community that was painting Israel essentially as the foreign occupying oppressor and the primary cause of the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Arabs. And it was a very skewed history, unbalanced history that was being presented in these films, taking things out of context. And there were a lot of Christians who were being influenced by the films. And we just sensed that another film needed to be made that presented a more fair and balanced view of the conflict.
Yeah.
And so we set out to do that. It was a 7-year journey.
Wow.
When you make a film, you got to raise the money to do it. And so that took some time. And then we did it in stages. And by the time it was finally done and ready to be released, it was 2021. And that came out, actually, the timing of that came out right during another, I guess you could say, uprising in this almost century-long conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, when there was a conflict with Gaza, with Hamas, in May of 21. And so the film got a lot of good attention, and I think really helped set the record straight. We had a lot of really nice endorsements, which essentially said that if there's one film you're going to watch to understand the conflict, Hope in the Holy Land is it.
Yeah.
And part of what we did with the film is we wanted to allow both sides to speak, to share their perspectives. And there was one perspective in particular that we included that most films on the conflict don't include, which are Arabs who support Israel's right to exist. And who accept Israel's right to exist. And those are the people of peace that we wanted to highlight, that we wanted to give more volume to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where kind of the hope comes from, when you have people on both sides who accept each other's existence. And so that's the story that Hope in the Holy Land tells, and encourages viewers to walk in.
Yeah, I think that is, to me, a great feature of the film. It's very well done. It's thorough. It gives a lot of the history. Todd does a great job hosting. But I think that the feature you just highlighted, the fact that you really do give a broad range of perspectives so that people could hear from, adherents of the viewpoints themselves, as opposed to maybe a caricature of the viewpoints. And Justin, I commend you for that, because I think that at least we're having the opportunity to hear the different sides in this. So I thought that was a great feature of the film.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we tried really hard to do that, and grateful for the feedback that we've received about the film since.
What kind of pushback did you get from? Look, when you delve into this area, you're going to have people that love you, hate you, and everything in between. I'm sure. I'm sure you got some pushback.
Yeah.
What was it like?
Yeah, the pushback that you get is that it's too sympathetic to one side or the other. I mean, that's just what happens when you have people who are very polarized or very divided on it and just only want to look at one side of it.
Yeah.
Any sympathy towards the other side might be seen as too much. And so that's essentially the feedback we got. And, listen, if that's the kind of pushback we're going to get, then we accomplished our goal. Cause listen, the reality is that yes, both sides have made mistakes. Israel is not a perfect nation. Right. It's made mistakes in its history. And so, we weren't going to be afraid to uncover some of those.
Yes.
But I think, when you fairly just look at the evidence that we put in front of people, when you truly just open up your heart to what people are saying, I think you'll come to the conclusion that Todd comes to in the film, is that Israel very much has the right to be here.
Yes.
And if you have a problem with that, well, then that's kind of your problem.
Right.
So that's the kind of pushback that we got. But
yeah, well, what I loved is that from watching Todd's journey, and what I think you really emphasized clearly, is that you can come to that position that Israel has the right to be there without also having hatred towards the other side. And I think that's critical.
Listen, for us as followers of Jesus, I mean, we're challenged to love our neighbor and to love our enemy. So what does that look like? And so we did the best job we could. And I think part of what that looks like is actually being willing to listen to the other side.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to agree with them.
Yeah.
I mean, you might passionately disagree, and we did, many times. But at least, respect the fact that they're humans made in the image of God, that God loves everyone. And again, God doesn't agree with everyone.
Yeah.
But God created people, loves people. There was a challenge that I received from someone before we made the film, where he said, Justin, if your theology doesn't lead you to love your neighbor and your enemy, then something's wrong with your theology. And I took that to heart, because listen, I knew that there was some work that needed to happen in me in regards to my feelings about the Palestinian people. And so making this film gave us the opportunity to just challenge our own perspectives.
Yeah.
And also open up the door for us to cultivate some real genuine friendships with the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And
so that's cool, man. It sounds like it was, in addition, obviously you're producing content, you're producing a film here, but sounds like it took you on a bit of a journey yourself in the process of producing this. And that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, a lot has happened since 2021, since Hope in the Holy Land was released. And of course, as we've noted, the biggest game changer, of course, was October 7th. When Hamas attacked Israel, and many have referred to this as Israel's 9/11 as we experience here in the United States. So, of course, we can't really overstate how pivotal October 7th has been in this discussion. So we're gonna discuss your film about that, about October 7th in just a bit. But before we do, Justin, just kind of share some of your thoughts. I mean, again, you're involved in this in depth. What are your thoughts about how October 7th changed the dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that this was essentially Israel's 9/11. I think what listeners need to understand is that this was Israel's 9/11 times 15. Okay, this would be the equivalent to approximately 400,000 Americans being killed in one day.
Compared to
Brutally.
The size of Israel and
compared to the size of Israel
and numbers,
proportionally. So imagine, in the U.S., 400,000 Americans brutally killed.
Yeah.
And then what I think approximately 10,000 or so taken hostage. So this is what this tiny,
that when you put it in those terms, that raises the ante a lot.
Yeah. So this is, the tiny nation of Israel who was inflicted, with this level of horror and trauma, which, by the way, is a trauma that's continuing. The war is still going on. There's still, as we speak, 58 hostages. So this is an ongoing trauma. Right. And for us, when we were there, we did the filming for the October 7 film in May of 24.
Okay.
And the sense that we got is that the Israelis who had believed that there was hope for peace with their Palestinian neighbors had completely lost that hope. Many had believed that there were those on the other side who were open to a two-state solution.
Okay.
But the majority of Israelis, if not all the Israelis we spoke to, were at the conclusion that that hope was completely lost. There is no peace partner on the other side who will accept Israel's right to exist. What they truly and ultimately want is the complete eradication and elimination of Israel. And so, we're talking to people who've lost hope there. We're talking to people who are looking at what had happened just days and weeks after October 7th occurred, where you had thousands, in fact, millions of people who were out on the streets in support of Hamas, not of Israel, not marching in support of the release of the hostages, but justifying what Hamas had done, calling their resistance justified.
Yeah.
In fact, even calling it resistance as a joke. But so there was disillusionment. In fact, that disillusionment still exists today. I spoke with one Jewish woman in Jaffa who said to me, Justin, I've got kids. My oldest is going to be going into the IDF soon, and I don't want him to have to go into the IDF. I don't want him to lose his life, as any mother would.
Sure. Yeah.
Doesn't want to see their kids go into battle. And she said, if I could, I'd leave our country right now because I actually don't feel safe here. She felt that there was a great failure in the government, the leaders of Israel, to allow, and I put allow in quotes, right, for October 7th to happen, but to essentially be, sleeping at the wheel, and to completely overlook the intelligence regarding this possible attack. And so she felt let down, betrayed by her government. And at that time, though, she knew, but I can't. Where am I going to go? If the world's not safe for me. Israel doesn't feel safe for me. What am I going to do? So there's that kind of tension, that dilemma among many Israelis that still very much exists to this very moment. But at the same time, we talk to Israelis who because of this realization of we have nowhere else to go, what are we going to do? We're going to have to fight for our existence. We're going to have to fight for our survival. And so there's this coming together in the midst of this anger and frustration and betrayal and disillusionment. So many different emotions that the Israelis are having to manage right now that I can't even personally, try to really fully understand what that's like.
Yeah, no, it's unfathomable. I guess, like you said, you really got to be there. But what I hear you saying is that you did sense resolve among the people to fight and to find a way forward.
Yeah. And listen, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're going to do whatever it takes to survive. And listen, the Jewish people, as we know very well, are a very resilient people.
Yeah.
God has been incredibly faithful to them throughout the centuries, has promised that they will forever be a nation before him. And so, right. Listen, we know that Israel's not going anywhere, but there's a lot of people who are trying to make that happen, trying to erase it. And so this is the existential threat that Israel is facing in the war that they're fighting.
Hey, if you're enjoying this conversation, I want you to know that the Bridge Builders Forum is more than just a podcast. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping Jews and Christians better understand their faith, the Bible, and each other. So your support helps us host these vital conversations and create educational resources and interactive learning experiences. And yes, all donations are tax deductible. So to give, just visit bridgebuildersforum.com and click donate. Every gift makes a difference. So thanks for standing with us. And if we can serve you in any way, send us a message. I want to ask you about a book that I read recently. So I'm going to kind of pivot into that. I know you are, you're attuned to the diversity of viewpoints regarding the Israeli-Palestinian issue and a growing viewpoint that I think some of my listeners, maybe many of my listeners, may be less familiar with is actually a Christian viewpoint that is highly critical of Israel and just Zionism in general. Of course, labels can be very, very tricky in this conversation, so I want to use them carefully. But some would refer to those who hold this viewpoint as maybe pro-Palestinian Christians. So I recently read this book. I got it right here, and it's literally just came out just a couple months ago. It's called Christ in the Rubble, and it's written by an author I know you're familiar with, Munther Isaac, who is he's a pastor in Bethlehem. So of course he's dealing with stuff and a lot of difficulties on the ground there as a pastor, but he's also a scholar, very, very good writer and thinker. And he's a leading voice in a movement and a conference that I know you've been following. And I remember even just vaguely us hearing you talk about this years ago, this conference and movement called Christ at the Checkpoint. And I learned in this book, I learned a lot about this viewpoint, this pro-Palestinian Christ at the Checkpoint viewpoint. And it's essentially viewing Zionism as racism, and it's equating Israel's actions with apartheid. And very importantly, that I want to hear your thoughts on this viewpoint, it uses the Bible. It uses the Bible and Christian faith to justify and promote this viewpoint. So anyway, Justin, talk to us about this Christ at the Checkpoint perspective and why it appeals to so many Christians.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it. We won't have time to get into here. But I'll start at the last part of your question, which is why does it appeal to Christians, Christians in the West? It is because it paints the Palestinian Christians within the Palestinian territories. So within what is often referred to as the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, this disputed territory. Sometimes it's called occupied territory. And of course, also Christians. In fact, some people aren't aware there are Christians in Gaza as well. Mm-hmm. It paints them as being the the oppressed, the innocent, the ones who are under a brutal occupation by this foreign colonization movement known today as Israel, but oftentimes referred to as Zionism.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Zionism is equated as racism, as basically being intolerant to anyone who's not Jewish. And so when you look at things through that lens, and you hear about the suffering of the Palestinian people, and let's just say this, there is suffering among the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
Right?
And to be clear, and you and I both are very, I mean, that's heartbreaking. And so and I know you bring that out in your films, I think very clearly, but keep going. But I just want to make sure it's a heartbreaking thing to see.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, regarding some of that suffering, some of it is just extreme inconveniences as a result of this war. I sometimes don't want to put the term suffering always on everything that they go through, but that's kind of the narrative, the message that they're sending. And I think it's important though too, and this is what we try to do in Hope in the Holy Land, which is to ask the question, why? Why are they suffering? Is it because of Israel just coming in and pushing people around and being a bully and taking and stealing Palestinian land, et cetera, et cetera? Or do the leaders of the Palestinian people have a part to play in this suffering? And I think that's a very big part of it. And the part that oftentimes is ignored by the Palestinian Christians like Munther Isaac, who we mentioned, is the relationship that exists among Muslims and Christians within these territories, and the lack of tolerance that Muslims have towards Christians. And the only time that they truly or will kind of tolerate the Christians is as long as the Christians toe the party line that Israel doesn't have the right to exist, that Israel needs to be erased. And so as long as the Palestinians go along with that, then they'll be tolerated, they'll be accepted. But there's a lot of Christians within the Palestinian society who have adopted the view that Israel doesn't have the right to exist, that Israel is practicing ethnic cleansing. Right now with Munther Isaac's book, he accuses Israel right there in the title of the book of genocide.
Yeah. I mean, the subtitle, Justin, is Faith, the Bible, and the Genocide in Gaza. So, honestly, when I read this book, I couldn't differentiate a lot as far as his big picture and his attitude towards Israel. I couldn't differentiate it much between that and what I read from maybe a Muslim viewpoint in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would say they're very much in concert with one another. And I guess maybe in some ways we could call it just anti-Semitism, just a hostility towards the Jews and their right to self-determination within a portion of their ancestral homeland. So they've recharacterized and reframed what Zionism is. And so they then will accuse Christians who support Israel, either for a theological reason or just a practical geopolitical reason, as then supporting this occupation, this genocide, the oppression. And they will say, how can we as Christians in the West, how can we do that? How can we support the oppressor and not care about the plight of the Palestinian people? And so it catches the heartstrings of a lot of a lot of uninformed or uneducated Christians who don't understand a lot of the nuances of the conflict. And so this is why for so many Christians, and a growing number of them, we're seeing them sympathize with the narrative that people like Munther Isaac and these conferences like Christ at the Checkpoint are espousing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the one of the key theological points in this book, the theology that sort of undergirds this perspective, this that Munther Isaac is proposing, and that the Christ and the Checkpoint conference and movement and kind of everything associated with that, is that the way he reads the Bible, he does not think that Israel has any kind of biblical right to be on the Holy Land. And so I think that that's a really important, like, theological, foundation for even, that relates to this viewpoint very importantly. And have you seen that as well, and kind of what you've observed?
It's very much a part of their theology. You could call it a replacement theology. I think some of this theology moves to liberation theology, where it views scriptures through a very political lens. Again, this is Marxist roots of the oppressor, that in a sense, the reason why Jesus came was to liberate us from whatever suffering, whatever difficulties we may be going through in this life. And so this is the view that they're teaching. Now, listen, you can completely put the Bible aside, in my opinion, and still have a very strong argument for why Israel has the right to exist.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the Jewish people are, indigenous to the land. This is their historical homeland. Listen, there's a lot of Israelis who don't read the Bible, who believe that they have the right to be there.
Yeah.
Not because of what the Bible teaches, but because, hey, this is our homeland. This is, you dig into the dirt. The archaeology is going to show that this is where we've been for well over 3,500 years. And so, sadly, this Palestinian, nationalistic movement, Palestinian nationalism, has really denied that right. And, I would encourage Munther Isaac, maybe you need to go talk to the Christians who live in Israel, the Arab Christians who live in Israel, see how they feel. He doesn't talk about, I would guess, I haven't read the book, but my guess is he never talks about those Christians.
Yeah, no, he really doesn't emphasize that at all. But if he had those conversations, Justin, what would he hear from them?
He would hear from them that Israel is the freest and safest nation for Arab Christians to live in than any other nation in the Middle East.
Yeah.
They have more rights, more freedom than any other Arabs in the Middle East.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what he'll hear.
And that's critical to this conversation.
Yeah. I think many people don't even realize, even people who are well educated about Israel, that 20% of Israel's population, of their citizens, are Arabs.
Yeah.
Who function in every level of society. Right. Even in government.
Right. They're living in
Supreme
Tel
Court.
Aviv. They're living, working in Tel Aviv and Haifa, in Jerusalem, all really throughout the land freely.
But there's guys like Munther Isaac who will say that Israel's practicing ethnic cleansing.
So let's get into that. Yeah.
If that's the case, Israel's not doing a really good job at it.
Right. Yeah. So, I know that with the films you've created, with the work that you've done, with, again, the conversations you're having with people of all kinds of viewpoints, you've had to respond, I know, to plenty of volatile, and divisive topics related to this. And one of those topics that we've already alluded to, but I'd really like to get you to, share your thoughts on this, is the accusation right here on the cover of this book, as we've already highlighted, this accusation that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. That is a very, very strong term. It is, again, throughout this book, which has getting a lot of traction. How do you, Justin, respond to that idea?
Frankly, I just tell people it's not true. Israel is not practicing or trying to commit genocide. The data simply does not support it. Genocide is the intent to eradicate in whole or in part a religious, ethnic or racial group. And if you just look at the evidence, there's no support for that. I mean, those who say that Israel is practicing genocide have essentially had to try to twist the definition of it. And I think it's important to say this. Israel was already being accused of genocide even before October 7th.
Yeah.
And that's because of the accusation of ethnic cleansing. But again, the facts just simply don't support it.
Yeah.
So I just try to remind people that, listen, be careful with the terms.
Yeah.
Try to understand, what does somebody mean by this term? And if you just look at the facts, this is not a genocide. This is war. This is a war
that Israel didn't start. Yeah.
That Israel didn't start, that Israel didn't want. And what would you want your nation to do?
Sure.
If you were attacked as Israel was attacked on October 7th, what would you expect your nation's response to be? In fact, how did the United States respond after 9/11?
Right.
Okay. We went to war with Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
We were in Afghanistan for several years. And here's the tragedy about war that I think some people just for whatever reason have seemed to have forgotten, is that civilians die in all wars.
Yeah.
There's never been a war that's ever been fought in the history of this world where civilians have not died.
Yeah.
And Israel doesn't want any civilians to die. But if you're going to go after the enemy, especially an enemy that is buried itself in an underground fortress and has left its civilian population completely exposed, knowing that many of their civilians are going to die, not trying to do anything to minimize the death of their civilians. What do you expect to happen? And if you look at the data, and this is where I say, again, look at the facts, look at the data. According to experts, Israel's war against Hamas has resulted in the lowest civilian to combatant death ratio in the history of modern urban warfare.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's from what experts are saying, it's somewhere between 1 to 2 civilians for every combatant that's killed. And this is based on reliable numbers.
Sure.
In the history of urban warfare, modern warfare, the typical ratio is 4 civilians. Some will rate it even as high as 9 civilians for every combatant that's killed. I think the best that America has done in its recent wars is 4 to 1.
Yeah.
But nobody questioned, our war, our conduct and how we went upon that war. Sure. I mean, maybe there were a few, but you didn't have protests about it. Nobody was calling for the destruction of America as a result of our war against Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. So why the double standard with Israel? And again, I think it's just because of the desire to delegitimize it, to demonize it, because the ultimate goal is its eradication, that Israel's enemies completely want to eradicate it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for weighing in there with clarity. And I think that's really important. One of the things about it too, that is that Israel, from what I understand, and maybe you could just comment on this briefly before we move on, Israel takes a lot of measures to even try to minimize the casualties by providing warnings and dropping leaflets and phone calls and things like this to make sure that to minimize civilian casualties. Can you just comment on that real quick? As far as what you've seen and understand about that, because I think that's an important factor.
Yeah, Israel has creates humanitarian zones.
Yeah.
Again, as you mentioned, warns people that they're going to attack in a certain area and encourages the civilians to move. Yeah. It does everything it can to try to minimize those casualties. But Hamas, on the opposite side, does everything it can to maximize those casualties, because they know that when civilians are killed, they're going to get the benefit of the mainstream media that's going to report those numbers, and it's going to make Israel look like they're the bad guy, that they're the villain, that they're thirsty for Palestinian blood.
Yeah.
And so this is part of the strategy. Listen, Hamas knows militarily it cannot win a war against Israel.
Right.
But it can win a war of information.
Yeah.
It can win a war of
Yeah, the PR war. No,
the
I
PR
got
war.
it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
I got it. And I appreciate, Justin, what you've said here about just the importance of the terminology, the language, the words that we use are so important in this discussion. Another term that I want to ask you about that has gained significant public exposure since October 7th, and even maybe has even been the importance of this term has even escalated more just in recent weeks, is this term Free Palestine. Just those two words together, Free Palestine. And has been much publicized. That's the phrase that was shouted by Elias Rodriguez after he recently murdered the two Israeli embassy staffers, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. I think in the most recent incident in Boulder, Colorado, the same phrase was uttered by the terrorists there, or at least there are claims of that. And so, but this is not a new slogan. Free Palestine has been a phrase used in the many college anti-Israel, pro-Hamas events and protests. But Justin, just discuss for us, if you would, what does this term, this phrase mean? And when individuals are shouting Free Palestine, what ultimately are they saying?
What they're ultimately saying is that the state of Israel between the river, the Jordan River, and the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, should not exist. There was a poll that was done right after October 7th in December of 23 that asked people, what do you think the long-term solution is to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And in the age group of 18 to 24, 51% of them said for all of Israel to be given to the Palestinians and Hamas. That was their response.
Wait,
51 out of every two.
Who were the people being surveyed, did you say?
Americans.
These are Americans.
So these are Americans who said, the 18 to 24 category, 1 out of every 2 of them said that all of Israel should be given to the Palestinians and Hamas.
So no more Jewish state.
No more Jewish state. Okay. And just so you know, the numbers didn't get all that much better after that age category. I think the next age category, it was 31%. So about 1 out of every 3. So
okay, that's still a lot.
You've got a swath. Yeah. I would say probably 1 out of every 4 Americans right now who are kind of at this place where they don't think Israel should be there. Now, I used to think that when those who are chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, or Free Palestine, that it was just because they were, they saw the Palestinians as being an oppressed people and they just wanted freedom for the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a two-state solution kind of.
Yeah, maybe a two-state solution.
Nodding to that or referring to that. Yeah. Okay.
But as you dig underneath it, what it really is calling for is no more Israel. And listen, we know that's exactly what it means for the Palestinians who've chanted it.
Yeah.
Starting back in the 1960s, when that became the phrase, the chant for the Palestinian Liberation Organization. It's been chanted at rallies in Gaza by Hamas and their followers. So they know exactly what it means. In fact, when they talk about the occupation, and I've learned this many, many years ago, that when they were talking about the occupation that they were under, realized they weren't just talking about Gaza, which, by the way, has not been occupied since Israel disengaged in 2005. That's covered in our film.
Yes.
The October 7 film.
Very clearly as well. And that's such an important point. You guys did a great job of that, but keep going. Thank you, Jim.
Or when they were talking about occupation of the so-called West Bank, that they were actually talking about all of Israel. They see all of the land as occupied. Because again, they believe in this narrative, this false narrative that the Jews are foreigners, colonizers who came and stole Palestinian land. And there just is no basis for truth in that. And I think people need to be reminded there's never been a Palestinian state. You can ask someone who was the first president of Palestine or the first king of Palestine. Where was its capital? That's never existed.
Yeah.
And so it's a false notion that there was a country or a state, an independent sovereign state or nation called Palestine. Palestine is actually the colonized name of Israel, of Judea Samaria, when the Romans forced the Jews out of the land, most of them out of the land, and then decided to start using the term Palestine to erase the memory of the Jewish people from that land. And so what Israel is a decolonization project. Okay.
Yeah.
This is about an indigenous people who are decolonizing the land and building a sovereign nation that has already exists. It's there, right?
Yeah.
The UN already voted. We're already past that. So Israel is there. It's not going anywhere. And anyone that says that it shouldn't be there, frankly, is denying the right of Jewish people to self-determination and security and self-defense within their indigenous homeland.
So essentially what I hear you saying is that when the term Free Palestine is being used, chanted, so forth, it's essentially Free Palestine of Jews. Is that right?
Yeah, it's either freedom really of the Jews or bring them back to a state of second class, a Dahimi status.
I see.
Which is what the Jews had to live under during the Islamic conquests and Islamic occupation for centuries. And so it's about get rid of the Jews or put them back kind of in their place where they belong to them. And so, it's in fact, I would say it's even in many respects, it's a genocidal chant. Yeah.
Yeah. And Justin, I think what's really important here is that sadly, this viewpoint that we're discussing, this isn't like a fringe viewpoint. This is a viewpoint that is held by many, 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 many large groups of people, including Christians. There are Christians who identify with this viewpoint as well. And so we're not talking about some extreme, I mean, we may think of it as extremist, but it's a commonly held viewpoint, widely held.
Yeah. And the double standard too is they don't seem to have a problem with the existence of Arab countries or Islamic led countries.
Yeah.
But somehow they have an issue with there being one Jewish country in the earth.
Got it. So let's, as we're kind of heading towards the finish line here, Justin, I want to talk a little bit about this new film that's going to be coming out soon. And the title of the film is October 7th, Bearing Witness to the Massacre. Let me just tell our audience, Justin allowed me to pre-screen the film so I could, for this conversation. And Justin, I mean, it was very emotional. It was gripping. And I want to encourage our listeners to support this film in every way possible. I'm going to include a link to there's the film website, so you can see that in the notes in the description. But Justin, I'm sure that this was a very challenging, beyond the logistics, just on a lot of levels. This is a challenging film to produce. But just share with us what inspired you and Todd to do it again, to produce another film, but on this topic on October 7th. And what do you hope is going to come out? What do you hope to communicate through this new film on October 7th?
Yeah. So when October 7th happened, it was in the midst of a follow-up docuseries that we were producing after the Hope in the Holy Land film. And we had just released episode 1 of that series, which is available on the Hope in the Holy Land website. We released it on September 1st of 23. So as you know, 37 days later was October 7. And we realized immediately you can't do a series about the conflict without, of course, covering the events of October 7. If we were going to cover it at all. But we knew that that was what we needed to do. I think there was this sense of a sacred responsibility that we had to go back and to capture the story and to tell the story accurately. Within, as you know, within days, maybe even hours of October 7, there were people who were denying that it happened.
Yeah.
Or rewriting the story, or calling it, resistance, not a massacre, not an intent to commit genocide. Over 30 student organizations at Harvard University signed a statement less than 24 hours. In fact, on the day of October 7th, that night at about 11 or so p.m., East Coast time, they released a statement blaming Israel for the events of October 7th.
Yeah, that's painful. It's painful stuff.
And listen, just as there's been Holocaust denial, we saw the October 7th denial, and we just felt we need to go back to tell the story and to record history, and to make sure that history gets fairly told. And so that was our motivation, for going back. And listen, it was hard. I'll tell you, just as you mentioned, it was not easy. I mean, just try to imagine what it would be like to go to Auschwitz or to the Warsaw Ghetto within months after it was in operation.
Right.
It was very hard to reconcile the places where we were at, knowing the level of brutality that occurred in those places. Very hard to put that together in my mind. And we went back to tell the story and to honor the memories of those who were killed on that day. And because there were so many lies that were being told about the history, I mean, part of like what was in that statement that was put out by these organizations at Harvard was that the Palestinians were just resisting they said 75 years of brutal occupation. Well, listen, I remember very well. In fact, I was there in the summer of 2005 when there were protests in Israel going on about the disengagement from Gaza, which is exactly what Israel ended up doing in August of 2005, where they completely left everything, removed 9,000 Israeli citizens and left greenhouses and homes and everything, left everything to the Palestinians, to the Gazans. And what did Hamas do within 24 hours after Israel left it all to them? Within 24 hours, they started firing rockets into Israel.
Right.
And continued those rocket fires for the next 18 years.
Yeah. Still going on every
day.
Still
going on. So, yeah. And so we knew okay, we need to tell the actual history. And so the first part of the film covers the history of Gaza. As a filmmaker, you always ask yourself, well, what's going to be different about our film from the other October 7 films that have been made? And I wanted to make sure that our film accurately told the history of Gaza leading up to October 7.
Yeah, that's a great feature of it, because it's you give a good, you tell the story of what happened, but having that foundational understanding, I think, is something that many people lacked. I mean, I learned some things, just watching that were really helpful. So I think that was a good strategic move, and I think that people are going to appreciate that. So I'm excited about this. It's a tough film. I'm just going to say it's very hard to watch, but extremely important. So really appreciate, and I'm glad that you and Todd decided to do this, because it's needed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Justin, here, I got one more question and topic I want to bring up. I love your organization's name. It's called the Kesher Project. And for our audience that maybe is not as familiar with Hebrew, the Hebrew word Kesher it means like connection. Right. So you use this term, Justin, and you've been doing this a long time, but you use it to symbolize and to promote opportunities for Christians and Jews to connect, to build bridges. And again, I think it's been a common, or a thread that's run throughout this conversation today, the importance of having face-to-face conversations with people. But would you say that there is a unique perhaps even urgent opportunity now for Jews and Christians. Just, again, connecting to your specific work, for Jews and Christians to Kesher, to connect regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I guess maybe to put it another way, what are ways that Jews and Christians can work together to build hope, certainly in the Holy Land, but in our local communities as well, pertaining to this issue?
Yeah, more so now than ever before. This is needed for followers of Jesus to connect, to Kesher with their Jewish friends and neighbors, many of who are feeling incredibly alone and isolated. They're wondering who are their real friends, who are their allies. In the United States, the Jewish community is just 2% of the population. They're a very small minority,
right?
And they feel greatly outnumbered right now. And I think the fact of the matter is they are.
Yeah.
And so they need to know who are their friends, who are the people who are going to stand with them, who are going to fight with them, who are going to help tell their story. And so I think it's important that we show up. I mean, if you are someone who lives in a community where there's a Jewish population, now is the time to start showing up to their events, to be present. Many of them will host film screenings or have speakers, maybe sometimes even of survivors from October 7.
Yeah.
And they're open to the public. And so, go to your Jewish Federation website, whatever community you live in, find out what they have going on and be there. If something happens, if there's an anti-Semitic attack of some kind, followers of Jesus need to be the first ones who are on the phone or showing up, knocking at their neighbor's door to say, I'm really sorry for what happened.
Yeah.
Know that I'm with you. Know that if push comes to shove, you can come into my home, whatever it takes. I'm there. And here's the thing too. I think one of the simple ways is because there's so much misinformation, which gets amplified oftentimes by the mainstream media, that we need to be using our platforms, our influence, to help get the truth out. I mean, we just saw this a week or two ago from this recording, when there was a report that was put out by a UN official that within 48 hours, 14,000 babies were going to be killed unless Israel did something about it. Unless Israel got in there to save these babies and essentially kind of, blaming Israel for not doing more. Right. It was a complete, distortion of the truth that ran around the world before truth had the opportunity to even tie its shoes. And so we need to be using our platforms to be challenging those lies, those in fact blood libels, and to just be present. I think that's the most important thing.
Presence, yeah,
is to be there and to show up when we're needed.
Yeah. Justin, before we truly wrap it up, as far as accessing for folks that are like, hey, I can't wait for this film, I want to do what I can to support it. What can we expect? When do you think it'll be released and available? And what can folks do to show their support for this new film about October?
Yeah, I want to just highly recommend sign up for the film updates on our film website, october7film.com. And we'll keep you updated about its release. We're aiming for a theatrical release in mid-September, and then to streaming platforms in early October. So, and then even after that, if churches, synagogues, community groups, if they want to host screenings, they're more than welcome to do that. In fact, they can host advanced screenings right now. So if a church is interested in doing that, they just can reach out to us through our website.
And that's already happening now, right?
It's already happening now. We've had a few screenings.
Yeah.
And people have been really, really moved and are saying, like I've been saying, everybody needs to see this film.
Yeah. And I'm going to be saying the same thing. Justin, hey, again, I appreciate all that you're doing to help people to think more clearly about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Your resources are excellent. Most of all, I really appreciate that you're encouraging people to dialogue and face each other respectfully. So, hey, man, keep up the great work. And I look forward to promoting the film and the different things you're doing with the Kesher Project. So thanks for your time with us today.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you.
All right. Hey, I would love to connect with you further, so feel free to leave a comment or send me a private message. And the best way for us to stay in touch is to sign up for the Bridge Builders Forum email at bridgebuildersforum.com. This will keep you informed of cutting-edge resources and opportunities for us to connect and learn together. Additionally, the Bridge Builders Forum is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and your support helps us create content that overcomes misunderstandings and advances ideas that build bridges between Jews and Christians. So we'll be back soon to discuss more ideas that help Jews and Christians better understand their faith, the Bible, and each other.